I took the job because it sounded easy, and because easy work is hard to find when you're down to your last few options. Overnight security at an abandoned mall on the edge of town. Sit in a chair, watch a few cameras, make a patrol or two, and collect a paycheck that didn't ask questions about your past. That was the pitch. That was what the listing said, and the man who interviewed me didn't bother correcting it. He just watched me for a little too long after I agreed. "Have you done night work before?" he asked. I told him yes, which wasn't exactly true, but close enough to pass. "Alone?" "Yes." Another pause. Then he slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. "Read these before your first shift," he said. "Memorize them if you can." I glanced down. It wasn't a contract or a liability waiver. It was a list, numbered, 7 lines in total. Rules. I almost laughed, but he didn't. "Are these serious?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just leaned back slightly in his chair, studying me in the same quiet way he had since I walked in. "Everything about this job is serious," he said finally. "If you don't think you can follow instructions exactly, then this won't work." I should have walked out then. That's the part that sticks with me now. Not the rules, not what happened later, but that moment. The clean exit. The chance to leave before I understood any of it. Instead, I folded the paper, put it in my jacket pocket, and told him I'd be there at 9. The mall sat about 20 minutes outside the city, past the last stretch of gas stations and chain restaurants, where the road narrowed and the streetlights thinned out until there were none at all. I got there early, around 8:40 p.m., because I didn't like the idea of arriving late to a place like that. From the outside, it didn't look like much. Big concrete structure, 3 levels. The kind of mall that had probably been busy once, back when malls were still something people built their weekends around. Now it just sat there, dark and closed off, its windows reflecting the empty parking lot and the line of trees behind it. There were still lights on inside, not many, just enough to suggest the place wasn't entirely dead. I parked near the main entrance. The lot was cracked, weeds pushing through the asphalt in long, thin lines, like something underneath had been trying to get out for years and finally succeeded in small ways. My headlights swept across the front doors as I pulled in, catching the glass at just the right angle that for a second I thought I saw movement inside. I told myself it was just reflection. At exactly 9 p.m., the front doors unlocked. Not opened, unlocked. There was a soft click, barely audible from where I stood, and the handles shifted slightly, like someone had turned them from the inside. I waited a few seconds, expecting someone to come out or wave me in. No one did. I pushed the door open myself. The air inside was cooler than outside, and it smelled faintly like dust and something electrical, like old wiring that had been running too long without maintenance. The lights overhead were dim and yellow, spaced far enough apart that the spaces between them felt deeper than they should have. "Hello?" I called. My voice carried farther than I expected, echoing down the long corridor ahead of me, bouncing off metal gates and glass storefronts that had long since been emptied. No response, just the low hum of electricity and something else underneath it, a sound I couldn't place at first. Not quite mechanical, not quite natural. I stepped fully inside and let the door close behind me. It locked the moment it shut. That same soft click, louder now in the quiet. I turned back, testing the handle. It didn't move. "Great," I muttered under my breath. "First shift, and I'm already locked in." "Correct." The voice came from my left. I turned sharply. There was a desk set up near what used to be an information kiosk. Behind it sat a man I hadn't seen when I walked in, though I would have sworn the space had been empty seconds earlier. He wore a dark uniform, not quite standard security. No visible company logo, just a plain black patch on the shoulder. "You're the new hire," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said. "You're..." "Temporary overlap," he replied. "I'll be leaving shortly." He stood, stepped out from behind the desk, and handed me a small ring of keys, along with a flashlight that felt heavier than it should have. Control office is on the second floor, east corridor. Cameras are already active. You'll check them every hour. He paused, then added, "You read the rules?" I hesitated. "Yeah." "Good. Then I won't repeat them." Something about that answer bothered me more than if he had gone over them again. "Anything else I should know?" I asked. He looked at me for a moment, then glanced past me down the corridor, toward the deeper part of the mall, where the light didn't reach as cleanly. "Don't assume you're alone," he said. Before I could ask what that meant, he walked past me toward the entrance. The doors unlocked as he approached. He stepped outside, and then he was gone. I don't mean he walked out of sight. I mean the moment he crossed the threshold, there was nothing there. No footsteps, no figure moving across the parking lot. Just empty space where a person had been. I stood there longer than I should have, staring through the glass. Then I remembered the paper in my pocket. I took it out, unfolded it, and read the first line again. Rule 1. Do not remain on the ground floor after 10 p.m. for any reason. I checked my watch. 9:12. Plenty of time. That's what I thought. That's what I told myself as I started walking deeper into the mall, the sound of my footsteps echoing just a little too long behind me, like something was following a half-second late, trying to match my pace and not quite getting it right. I found the escalator near the center of the main corridor, frozen in place like everything else in the mall. Its metal steps dull with a thin film of dust that hadn't been disturbed in a long time. The handrails were intact though, and when I placed my hand on one, it felt faintly warm, as if something had been running through it recently. That didn't make sense, but I didn't linger on it. I climbed to the second floor, counting each step without meaning to, the rhythm of it steady enough to keep my thoughts from drifting too far ahead of me. At the top, the air felt different, not warmer or colder, just thinner somehow. Like the space had been stretched slightly, the distance between things just a fraction wider than it should have been. The corridor up here mirrored the one below. Closed storefronts, metal gates, dark glass reflecting the dim overhead lights. But there was something else too, a low sound that hadn't been as noticeable downstairs. A soft, intermittent clicking, irregular and distant, like something tapping lightly on a hard surface far away. I told myself it was just the building settling. The control office was exactly where the man had said it would be. A reinforced door set into the wall beside what used to be a small electronics store. The sign above it was gone, but the outline remained, a slightly cleaner rectangle against the otherwise aged surface. The door was unlocked. Inside, the room was smaller than I expected, maybe 15 feet across, with a desk along one wall and a bank of monitors mounted above it in 2 rows. Most of the screens were active, showing different parts of the mall from fixed camera angles. The image quality was grainy, slightly distorted, like the cameras were older than they should have been. There was a chair behind the desk, a metal cot against the far wall, and a single standing lamp in the corner, casting a steady, pale light that felt separate from the rest of the building. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. It didn't lock automatically this time. I took that as a good sign, even though I wasn't sure why. The monitors drew my attention immediately. 8 feeds in total, ground floor corridors, entrance, parking lot, stairwells, and one camera that seemed to be pointed at a section of the mall I didn't recognize. A wide, open space with scattered shapes that looked like display fixtures or maybe mannequins, though the angle made it hard to tell. I leaned closer to that screen. For a moment, nothing moved. Then something shifted. Not quickly, not in a way I could point to and say exactly what had changed. Just a subtle difference between 1 second and the next, like a frame had been replaced with another, almost identical to it. I blinked and straightened up. "Just the feed," I said quietly. "Just bad quality." My voice sounded smaller in the room than it had downstairs. I set the keys on the desk and took out the folded paper again. If I was going to be here all night, I might as well actually read the rules properly. Rule 1, I already knew. Rule 2, do not use reflective surfaces after 10 o'clock p.m. This includes mirrors, windows, and inactive screens. I glanced at the monitors. All of them were active. That felt intentional. Rule 3, if you hear your name called from outside the control office after 11 o'clock p.m., do not respond. I read that one twice. Rule 4, the basement level is off limits until 4 o'clock a.m., regardless of what you hear or see. Rule 5, if any mannequin appears in a camera feed where it was not previously present, do not return to that area. I looked back at the screen I'd been watching, the one with the shapes. I couldn't be sure, but I thought there were more of them now than there had been a minute ago. Rule 6, if the power goes out, remain seated and keep your eyes closed until it returns. Rule 7, do not open the control room door between 2 o'clock a.m. and 4 o'clock a.m. under any circumstances. I lowered the paper slowly. They're not joking, I muttered. Something about seeing all of them together, written out like that, made the job feel different from what I'd imagined. Less like security work, more like containment. Like the rules weren't there to protect me from the building, but to protect something else from me, or from being noticed. I folded the paper again and placed it on the desk, keeping it within reach. 9:38 p.m. Still early. I decided to do a quick patrol before 10 o'clock, just to get a sense of the layout. The rules didn't say I couldn't, and I didn't like the idea of sitting in that room for hours without knowing what was out there. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped back into the corridor. The difference hit me immediately. It was quieter now. Not completely silent, but the background hum I'd noticed earlier had faded, replaced by that same intermittent clicking sound. Clearer now, closer than before. Click, pause, click, click, pause. I turned slowly, sweeping the flashlight beam across the corridor. The light cut through the dim yellow overhead glow, illuminating the closed storefronts one by one. Most were empty. A few still had displays inside, covered in dust and shadows. One of them had mannequins. 3 figures, standing near the front of what used to be a clothing store. Their features were smooth and unfinished, the standard blank expressions you'd expect. But something about the way they were positioned felt intentional. All 3 were facing the corridor, facing me. That's normal, I said under my breath. They're display models. Of course they're facing out. I kept walking. The clicking sound followed. Not directly behind me, but not fixed in one place either. It shifted as I moved, always just out of sync with my footsteps. Click, step. Click, click, step. I checked my watch. 9:52 p.m. 8 minutes. I turned back toward the escalator, deciding that was enough for a first look. As I passed the store again, I glanced at the mannequins without stopping. There were 4 now. I stopped. The flashlight beam steadied on the display. 4 figures, arranged almost exactly the same as before, except for the new one standing slightly behind the others, its head angled just enough that it seemed to be looking past them, looking at me from between their shoulders. No, I said quietly. No, that's not. I stepped closer, raising the flashlight. The dust on the floor in front of the display was undisturbed. No footprints, no drag marks, nothing to suggest anything had moved. I backed away slowly. Rule 5. If any mannequin appears in a camera feed where it was not previously present, do not return to that area. This wasn't a camera feed, but I wasn't about to test the difference. I turned and walked faster toward the escalator, the clicking sound picking up slightly behind me, just enough to make it feel like whatever was making it had noticed the change in my pace. 9:58 p.m. I took the steps 2 at a time. By the time I reached the second floor, my breathing had picked up more than I wanted to admit. I didn't stop moving until I was back inside the control office, with the door closed behind me. 9:59. 1 minute. I sat down in the chair, eyes on the monitors, forcing myself to stay still. At exactly 10:00 p.m., the lights on the ground floor dimmed. Not completely off, just lower, softer, like the building was settling into a different state. I looked at the monitor showing the corridor I'd just left. The storefront with the mannequins was still visible. I didn't look away from the monitor. Not immediately. There's a point when something doesn't make sense, where your brain tries to correct it before it accepts it. It fills in gaps, adjusts details, convinces you that what you're seeing isn't what you think you're seeing. 5 mannequins. Maybe there had always been 5. Maybe I'd miscounted. Maybe the angle was different. I leaned closer to the screen, focusing on the edges of each figure, trying to match them to what I remembered. 1 in front, 2 slightly behind, 1 off to the left, and 1 standing further back than the others. The 5th, the one that hadn't been there before. Its head was tilted now. Not much, just a few degrees to the side. The kind of shift you might miss if you weren't already looking for it. I forced myself to sit back. Rule 5. It didn't matter whether I'd seen it in person or on the camera. The intent was clear. Don't go back. Fine, I said quietly. I won't. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I checked the other monitors. Ground floor entrance, empty. Parking lot, still nothing but the faint reflection of the overhead lights in the cracked asphalt. Stairwell, clear. Then I paused on the feed, showing the wide open area, the one with the scattered shapes. They weren't shapes, not anymore. Mannequins, dozens of them, spread across what looked like an old department store floor. Some upright, some missing limbs, some positioned like they'd been mid-display when the place shut down and never moved again. Except now, they were all facing the same direction, toward the camera. I felt a slow tightening in my chest. Okay, I said. That's new. I reached for the paper again, scanning the rules as if something there might explain what I was seeing. Nothing did. Not directly. But Rule 2 caught my attention again. Do not use reflective surfaces after 10 p.m. I glanced at the inactive monitors. There were 2 of them, dark screens, between the active feeds. From where I sat, I could see faint reflections in them. Not clear, just vague shapes and movement from the room behind me. I stood up and walked over, turning the monitors slightly so they faced away. No reflections, I muttered. Easy. As I adjusted the second screen, I caught something in the corner of my eye. Movement, behind me. I turned. The room was empty. Desk, cot, lamp, door closed. Nothing else. I exhaled slowly, forcing my shoulders to relax. You're just on edge, I said. New place, weird rules, that's all. The clicking sound echoed faintly through the walls. Closer now. I checked the time. 10:17 p.m. Still early. Too early for anything serious to happen. That thought felt naive the moment it formed. I sat back down and focused on the monitors, forcing myself into a routine. Check each feed. Note anything unusual. Move on. Entrance, clear. Parking lot, clear. Stairwell, clear. Department store, I froze. One of the mannequins was closer to the camera. Not dramatically, not in a way that screamed movement, but it was closer than it had been a minute ago. I stared at it, waiting. Nothing, no shift, no motion, just stillness. I picked up the pen from the desk, hadn't noticed it before, and wrote the time on the back of the rules sheet. 10:18 p.m. Then I circled the monitor feed number. If it moves again, I said quietly, I'll know. Something tapped against the door. Soft, 3 times. I didn't move. The sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. Not loud, not urgent. Just deliberate. I looked at the clock. 10:22 p.m. Too early for Rule 3. That didn't make it better. Hello? I called before I could stop myself. Silence. Then, hey. The voice was right outside the door. Male. Familiar. I frowned. Hello? I said again, standing halfway out of the chair. It's me, the voice said. I forgot something. Recognition hit a second later. The man from earlier. The one who had handed me the keys. "I thought you left," I said, stepping toward the door. "I did," he replied. "Just need you to open up for a second." I reached for the handle, then stopped. Something about his tone felt off. Too even, too flat. I looked back at the paper on the desk. Rule 3. If you hear your name called from outside the control office after 11 p.m., do not respond. It wasn't 11 yet. 10:23. So technically, this didn't apply, right? "Can you just open the door?" he said, a little sharper now. "I don't have all night." I hesitated. Then something clicked into place. Not the rule, the voice. It sounded like him, but not exactly. There was no variation in it. No natural shift in tone or pacing. Every word landed with the same weight, the same spacing, like it had been measured out in advance. "Tell me your name," I said. Silence. Then after a pause that felt just slightly too long, "You know my name." I stepped back from the door. "No," I said, "I don't." The handle rattled once, harder this time. "Open the door." The voice had changed. Still his, but underneath it, something else pressed through. Something lower, stretched thin, like a second voice trying to speak through the first. I didn't move. The handle rattled again, then stopped. Silence filled the room. I stood there, listening, waiting for another sound. Nothing came. Slowly, I backed away from the door and returned to the desk. "Not opening that," I said quietly. My hands were shaking now. Not badly, but enough to notice. I placed them flat on the desk until they steadied. The monitors flickered, just for a second. Every screen dimmed, then snapped back. I looked up immediately. The department store feed, the mannequin that had been closest to the camera, was gone. I scanned the frame. All the others were still there, but that one, it wasn't in view anymore. A new sound echoed through the mall. Not clicking, not tapping. Footsteps, slow, measured, somewhere on the second floor. Somewhere outside the control room. I turned my head toward the door without thinking. The footsteps stopped, right outside. Then, very softly, my name. Spoken clearly, from the other side. I didn't answer. Not this time. The sound of my name lingered in the air for a second, just long enough to feel deliberate, like whatever was out there knew exactly how long to hold it before letting it fade. Then, silence. I kept my eyes on the monitors, even though every part of me wanted to look at the door. That felt important. Not a rule I'd read, but something that made sense anyway. Attention mattered here. Where you put it, how long you held it. The footsteps didn't resume. Whatever had been outside was either still there, or gone in a way that didn't involve walking. I checked the time. 10:41 p.m. Too early. Everything still felt too early. I forced myself to continue the routine. Entrance, empty. Parking lot, unchanged. Stairwell, I leaned closer. There was something at the top of the stairs now. A shape, just at the edge of the frame. Not fully visible, like it was standing slightly out of view, angled so the camera couldn't capture it directly. I watched for movement. None came. "Don't focus on it," I said quietly. "Just note it." I wrote it down. 10:42, possible obstruction at stairwell cam. My handwriting looked tighter than usual. The letters pressed harder into the paper. I moved to the next screen, ground floor corridor, the store with the mannequins. There were 6 now, arranged in a loose line, just inside the entrance, all facing outward, facing the corridor, facing the direction of the escalator, facing me if I had been down there. I swallowed and looked away from that feed. "Doesn't matter," I said. "Not going back down." The clicking sound started again. Louder now, closer. Not from outside the room this time. From inside. I froze. It came from behind me. Click, pause, click, click. I turned slowly. The cot, the lamp, the wall, nothing. The sound came again, closer, right behind my chair. I stood up so fast, the chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound sharp and real in a way that grounded me for half a second. There was nothing there. No source, no movement. Just the empty space where the sound had been. Then I saw it. The inactive monitor. The one I had turned away earlier. Its surface was dark, but angled just enough now that I could see a faint reflection. Not of the room, of something standing behind me. Tall, still, head slightly tilted. I spun around. Nothing. The room was empty. I looked back at the screen. The reflection was gone. My chest tightened, breath catching halfway in. Rule 2, I said under my breath. No reflective surfaces. I grabbed the spare cloth from the desk drawer, didn't remember opening it, but it was there, and draped it over the screen completely, pressing it flat so nothing could show through. No reflections, I repeated. The clicking stopped, just like that, as if cutting off the reflection had cut off whatever was using it. I stepped back slowly, keeping my eyes on the covered monitor. Nothing moved, nothing changed. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding, and sat back down, this time more carefully. Okay, I said. Okay, that works. The rules worked. That was the first time I actually believed that. Not suggestions, not superstition. Instructions. I checked the time. 11:03 p.m. Rule 3 was active now. I didn't have to wait long to test it. Hey. The voice came from the door again. Different this time. Softer. Female. Can you help me? I stared straight ahead at the monitors. Didn't turn. Didn't respond. I think I'm hurt, the voice continued. I can't find the exit. It sounded close. Right outside. Close enough that if I reached out, I might be able to touch the door and feel the presence on the other side. Please, it said. I know you're in there. My hands tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. Don't respond. Don't engage. The voice shifted. Subtle at first, then more noticeable. Layering. 2 tones instead of 1, then 3, all speaking the same words, slightly out of sync. Please, please, please. I shut my eyes for a second, just long enough to break the instinct to look. When I opened them, I focused on the monitors again, the department store feed. Every mannequin was facing the camera now, even the ones that had been angled differently before. All of them. Perfect alignment. Watching. Waiting. The voice outside the door stopped mid-sentence. Cut off clean. Silence rushed in to fill the space. I checked the time. 11:11 p.m. The pattern of that number stuck with me longer than it should have. I wrote it down without thinking. Then something changed on the monitors. The power didn't go out, but it dipped. All the screens dimmed, not flickering this time, just lowering in brightness, as if something was draining energy from the system. The room felt heavier, the air thicker. I remembered Rule 6. If the power goes out, remain seated and keep your eyes closed until it returns. It hadn't gone out, not completely, but it felt like it might. I stayed still anyway, didn't risk moving, didn't risk testing the difference between dim and off. The clicking started again. Not behind me, not outside. Everywhere, all at once. Click, click, click. Layered and overlapping, like dozens of small impacts happening just out of sight in every direction. I gripped the edge of the desk, forcing myself not to turn, not to look for the source. The monitors continued to dim, the images fading toward black. Not off, I whispered. Not off yet. The clicking grew faster, more chaotic, less patterned. Then, darkness. Total. Complete. The power cut. I shut my eyes immediately. Tight. Hands gripping the desk. Breath shallow but controlled. No light. No sound from the monitors. Just the clicking. Right next to me now. Close enough that I could feel it, not just hear it. A sharp, plastic sound. Like fingers tapping against a hard surface. Right beside my ear. I didn't move. Didn't react. Didn't open my eyes. The tapping continued for what felt like minutes. Then slowed. then stopped. Silence returned. Gradually, the hum of electricity came back. Faint at first, then stronger. Light pressed against my closed eyelids. I waited, counted to 10, then 20, then 30. Only then did I open my eyes. The room was back. Monitors active, lab steady, everything exactly as it had been, except for one thing. On the desk, next to the folded rule sheet, was a handprint. Not mine. Too long, too narrow. The fingers extended slightly past where they should have ended. The proportions just off, enough to feel wrong. And pressed into the center of the print, a small indentation, as if something had pushed inward, testing the surface, testing the space where my hand had been. I didn't touch the handprint. That felt important in a way I couldn't fully explain. Not a written rule, but something that followed the same logic as the others. Don't interact. Don't acknowledge more than necessary. Don't give it a response it can build on. So I moved my hand to the other side of the desk and kept my eyes on the monitors. The time read 1:26 a.m. Closer now. The space between events felt like it was shrinking. Like whatever governed the night inside the mall was tightening its schedule, pushing everything toward a point I couldn't see yet, but could feel approaching. I checked each camera again. Entrance, unchanged. Parking lot still empty. Rain beginning to streak faintly across the lens. Stairwell. The shape at the top was gone. Department store. I leaned forward slightly. The mannequins were no longer facing the camera. They were facing away. All of them. Toward the back of the store. Toward something the camera couldn't see. I felt a slow, creeping pressure at the base of my skull. Don't think about it, I said quietly. Just observe. But the thought formed anyway. Something had their attention. Something behind them. Something that mattered more than the camera. More than me. A low sound rolled through the building. Not clicking, not tapping, something deeper. A hum almost, but uneven. Like a voice stretched too far, flattened into vibration. It came from below, from the basement. I looked at the rules. Rule 4, the basement level is off limits, until 4 a.m. I checked the time again. 1:32. Not even close. The sound continued. Soft. Persistent. Calling attention to itself without getting louder. That felt deliberate. Like it didn't need to be loud. Just noticeable enough that I couldn't ignore it. Stay put, I said. Just wait. The monitors flickered once. Then stabilized. A new feed appeared. Not switching from another. Adding. A ninth screen. Bottom corner. Basement stairwell. I hadn't seen that camera before. The angle looked down the steps into darkness. The lower half swallowed in shadow, where the light didn't reach. The hum was louder through the speaker. I watched the frame. Nothing moved. Then, a figure stepped into view at the bottom of the stairs. Human, standing still, facing up toward the camera, toward me. The image was grainy, but I could make out details. Security uniform, older style. The posture slightly off, like the body was holding itself together through effort rather than instinct. My chest tightened. Not real, I said. Doesn't matter. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching. Then slowly, too smoothly, it raised one arm, not waving, pointing, up the stairs, toward me. The hum deepened, shifted, and underneath it, just barely audible, a voice. Not clear, not formed into words, but close, too close. I pushed back from the desk slightly. Rule 7, I said, louder now. Do not open the control room door between 2:00 a.m. and 4:00 a.m. I checked the time. 1:41. 19 minutes. The figure on the screen didn't lower its arm, didn't move at all, just held that position, waiting. The hum stopped, cut off completely. Silence dropped into its place. Then a knock. 4 times, evenly spaced, from the control room door. I didn't turn, didn't look. The knock came again, 4 times, same rhythm, same spacing, then the voice. My voice. Open the door. Perfect. Exact. No distortion. No layering. Just me. I know you can hear me, it said. We don't have much time. I clenched my jaw, staring at the monitors. Don't respond. You saw it on the camera, my voice continued. You know what's down there. The basement feet flickered, halfway up the stairs. I hadn't seen it move. You're going to have to come down eventually, the voice said. Might as well do it now. Another knock. 4 times. I focused on my breathing. Slow, even, controlled. You're alone in there, it said. You don't have to follow the rules. That was wrong. That was the first thing it had said that was clearly, obviously wrong. Everything so far had danced around truth. This didn't. I leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. That means you need me to break them, I said quietly. Silence. Then softer. Open the door. The time ticked over. 1:59 a.m. 1 minute. The pressure in the room built. Not physical, mental, like anticipation stretching to its limit. The figure on the basement feed reached the top step. Its face tilted up toward the camera, toward me. I couldn't make out the features clearly, but I knew it wasn't right. 2 a.m. Everything stopped. The knocking, the voice, the hum, gone. The basement feed cut to static. The 9th monitor disappeared. The room returned to stillness, complete, absolute. I sat there, not moving, not speaking, letting the silence settle fully before I allowed myself to breathe normally again. Okay, I said after a while. Okay. Rule 7 was active now. No opening the door. No exceptions. The next 2 hours passed slowly. Nothing spoke, nothing knocked. The monitors showed only stillness. Mannequins frozen in place. Corridors empty. The mall quiet in a way that felt earned, rather than waiting. At 3:47 a.m., the lights began to brighten, gradually, subtly, like something was lifting. At exactly 4 a.m., the change completed. The air felt different again. Heavier before, now lighter. Normal, or close enough. My legs felt stiff, like I hadn't moved in days instead of hours. I looked at the door, then at the rules. Rule 4. The basement was no longer off limits. I didn't move toward it. Some rules might expire. That didn't mean they stopped mattering. At 6:02 a.m., the front doors unlocked. I left without looking back. I didn't check the ground floor. Didn't stop at any storefronts. Didn't count anything. The parking lot looked the same as it had the night before. Gray, empty, normal. I got in my car and drove. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't check my phone. Just drove until the mall was far enough behind me that I couldn't see it in the rearview mirror anymore. I quit that morning. Didn't go back. Didn't answer their calls. They stopped trying after a few days. But sometimes, late at night, when I pass a dark window or catch a reflection at the wrong angle, I see something standing just behind me. Not moving, not quite visible, waiting for me to look directly at it. I don't. That's the only rule I still follow, the one they didn't write down.